Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Preston Kelly Show. Welcome back to episode 9. We are finally back. I took a week off of last week after the first 8 episodes and kind of just took a week to myself and a week to focus on other things. But we are back and here recording another episode because there is so much to talk about here in the sports world. So much going on aside from football, of course, that we like to talk about the most right now as we are in the full swing of football season. But we also have baseball, of course, still going on with the MLB playoffs. In fact, we are in the World Series, and the World Series is going on between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. And then we're going to also dive into a little bit of basketball because basketball season has kicked off since we last recorded. So, in my limited knowledge of the NBA, we're just going to touch on a little bit of basketball. As you can see, I'm repping my Steph Curry jersey right now. Yes, I am indeed a Steph Curry fan, a Warriors fan. Leave me alone. I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to rep my guy. The Warriors, off to a hot start right now. Getting a few wins on the belt. In fact, that we beat the Clippers last night. I tried to stay up and watch that game as long as I could because it was the first actual Warriors game I could sit down and finally watch. I fell asleep before the end of it, but of course I was glad to wake up and see that we won. We're off to a hot start right now. Stephen Curry playing great at age 37. The Jimmy Butler trade is looking magnificent as of right now, seeing the way that he's playing. Jonathan Kuminga, we got all the contract and trade stuff behind us, and he is now going to be officially, it was announced today that he's going to be moving forward as a starter in the Warriors lineup. Draymond Green, of course, one of the best defenders still in the NBA right now. As many texts as he likes to get, he's still one of the greatest defenders in the NBA. So yes, I am a big Warriors fan, and we'll see what we're able to do this year. Obviously, everybody kind of looks at us and says the obvious thing like, "Oh, that's one of the oldest team," or that's just a bunch of old guys. And yes, we are the second oldest team in the NBA, behind, ironically, the Clippers. But it's okay. We have guys that love to hoop, and we'll see what we're able to do this year. But um, I wrote down a couple of things because I wanted to talk about basketball, but I didn't really know what to talk about. Uh, as obviously I'm not the biggest basketball fan. However, I want to try and talk about all the sports that I can just to get as many viewers as I can in here because obviously with me not watching as much basketball, maybe there is somebody else out there that loves basketball and wants to hear about basketball. And one of with the teams, or excuse me, the team that I wrote down that with my limited knowledge of basketball, that it shocked me to see how good that they're doing right now. The 76ers are 4-0 right now, haven't lost a game. And this was a team that missed the playoffs miserably last year. Joel Embiid has been struggling with, staying healthy as I believe, I want to say I saw like a stat where he's missed more games in the amount of time that he's been in the NBA compared to the amount of games that he has played. But Joel Embiid's still one of the best basketball players in the game right now. But that's not the reason they are winning. Tyrese Maxey is playing out of his mind right now, averaging 37 through 4 games so far as the start of the season goes. And that he is a big reason why the 76ers are 4-0 right now and viewed as one of the best teams in basketball. Obviously, I don't think a lot of people were predicting that the 76ers were going to get off to such a hot start. Now that they have, we'll see what they're able to do if they're able to give it up. Tyrese Maxey, obviously, um, I knew that he was a pretty good point guard. I think a lot of people knew that. He got a big payday here recently from the 76ers. And now he's really starting to showcase that talent we all knew that he has. And you got to sit here and think that that is a dangerous duo uh, between him and Joel Embiid um, if Tyrese is able to keep this up, um, playing the way that he is, and it's just going to be a sign of good things to come. But be able to see what they're able to do on Friday because Friday the NBA Cup starts. If you don't know what that is, the NBA Cup is basically a version of, I guess you could say, the playoffs, but it happens at the beginning of the regular season. And every team is involved in this cup series that they have. Games get played throughout the first played. I forget how long it takes, but they are put into groups, kind of like divisions and everything. It's not just the same people that they share divisions with. It's different teams, and they eventually play all the way up until what leads up to an NBA like cup championship. So basically the finals, except it's for the cup trophy. It's only one game. So this is something that they decided to start doing a couple years ago. They've kept it going ever since. There are a bunch of different you know, views from it. Some people hate it, some people love it. I can see both sides and everything, but I do think that it is nice to see something like this being played early on, because maybe it gives these teams a reason to be a little bit more competitive at and during the regular season, as I feel like that's one of the biggest issues, not just in basketball, but in sports in general, is that you see a lot of teams maybe not grind and play as hard and as good as they can because it's the regular season. They save it for the postseason when we really see teams start to play as rough as they can. So we'll see how entertaining that this Cup series winds up being. So far, the regular season has been very entertaining to begin with. I try to do my best to follow basketball through social media and stuff like ESPN as much as I can, just to make sure that I'm staying up to date with all the latest news and updates that happen regarding the NBA and basketball. So we'll continue to talk a little bit of basketball as the season goes on. And definitely for sure when big things happen, such as trades, big games, injuries, stuff like that. But I have to fair warn you people, my knowledge of basketball is very limited, so I will try and do the best I can. Now, let's shift over to baseball. As I mentioned before, the playoffs are still going on, as it's now the World Series. Of course, the World Series being played between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. And right now, as of I'm recording, today is Wednesday, October 29th. It's tied 2-2. The Blue Jays won last night, game 2, 6-2. After game 3 went 18 innings long. 18 innings. That is 2 full baseball games that game 3 went in LA. And sure enough, it should shock nobody, but Freddie Freeman was the guy who walked it off with a walk-off bomb in the 18th inning. Shohei Ohtani got intentionally walked 4 times that night to go along with a 2-homer night, and I want to say he went 4 for 4 with 4 intentional walks. So yeah, that game dragged on here on the East Coast till every bit of 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I sadly did not get to see this game, A, because I would have been asleep, period, and B, I was watching my Commanders play. We'll get to football here in just a little bit. But yeah, so the Dodgers and Blue Jays, they've kind of just gone blow for blow so far to start out the World Series. Blue Jays took game 1, Dodgers took game 2 and 3, and now the Blue Jays win game 4 last night to secure at least not only, the game 5 tomorrow with the chance to go ahead, but now they will officially be on the road and get a chance to play and win the World Series in Toronto. Now, what does this mean for the Blue Jays and Dodgers with the game going 18 innings on Monday night? I think the biggest thing to look at is pitching. When the baseball game goes that long period, 18 innings, you're going to grind out a lot of pitching, and it's very rough to play 3 games back to back to back, especially when it was the first game that went 18 innings long and not have a rest day in there. They did okay last night, the Blue Jays did, and the Dodgers obviously wasn't as high scoring, but your pitching is just what's going to hurt the most. We'll see what happens tonight, and then they get the off day to travel back to Toronto. So we'll see how much game 3 affects them. We can't really make any predictions wise or anything. I mean, we can say that obviously, the obvious, that pitchers won't be as rested and have as much energy maybe as they would to come pitch in a certain game as they would if the game did not go 18 innings. But we just don't know yet. So we'll see how this all unfolds. Obviously, by the time that we come back next week, the World Series will be over, and we'll be sure to do a full recap of the World Series and how it panned out. And whoever the eventual champion is, we'll make sure to talk about that on next week's episode. But sticking with right now, I also did write down that I wanted to recap how I did with my predictions. I was somewhat correct. I did predict in the World Series that it was going to be the Mariners and the Dodgers. I made my predictions even before the World Series started at all, or any part of the MLB playoffs. You might have seen it. I posted it everywhere on social media, and I also covered it on here a few episodes ago. And my prediction, yes, was the World Series would be the Dodgers and the Mariners. Unfortunately, the Mariners did not make it. I also had the Mariners winning the World Series. They were right there. They were right on the edge. They took it all the way to Game 7 in the ALCS between the Blue Jays and the Mariners. They were right there until George Springer hit that three-run, I think it was three-run bomb to take a 4-3 lead. The Blue Jays never gave it up, and the Blue Jays, of course, went on to win Game 7 of the ALCS to make it to the World Series. And bring a championship back to Toronto. First time they've even been in the World Series since 1993. That was when Joe Carter obviously walked it off the World Series in Toronto that year. So a bunch of good feel-good stories that can come out of this. I think the biggest news right now is George Springer was not in the lineup last night after he got hurt. I believe it was his ankle that he hurt in that 18-inning game on Monday. We'll see how that affects them, what is the severity of the injury. I should have checked before I came on. That's bad journalism on my part. But obviously he was out of the lineup last night, but it did not seem to affect him as they were still able to win. You still got Vlad Guerrero in the lineup, and he is absolutely mashing this postseason. He has unlocked a different level, and for sure, if they win, Vladdy will not only be the World Series MVP, but he will be the MLB playoffs MVP. So definitely looking forward to see how this World Series ends up panning out. It seems like that we have a very, very fun rest of the World Series left ahead of us. So I would love to see this thing go full 7, be able to sit on Friday night and watch this thing unfold. But we shall see. But for now, that's it with baseball. That's it with basketball. Let's jump into some football as we always do. Now, this is where we kind of give our little recaps of, what has gone on. Obviously, I wasn't able to make predictions because I did not record last week for week 8. But we will still recap we're going to recap the biggest games and the biggest moments of week 8. And there's also a little bit of college football, something that's happened in college football that we'll jump to and at the end. But first, we'll just recap a little bit of all the main NFL stuff that's going on. We'll start out with this. If you guys know me, I've mentioned it multiple times. I'm a Washington fan. Washington played Kansas City on Monday Night Football. First half, it was looking good. Jane Daniels is out for this game because he's been injured. Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, both back from injury. And they were looking to see if they can help this offense at all. Marcus Mariota making his 3rd start of the year after going 1-1 before as a starter up to the point. With Jaden hurting his hamstring again, walking into Arrowhead and seeing if they could get a sneaky victory out of there. First half of that game, it looked pretty good. They were both going blow for blow. The defense was holding Patrick Mahomes in check, forced 2 different turnovers. Marshawn Lattimore finally got him an interception. He needed that badly, and Bobby Wagner got an interception off of a tip pass at Travis Kelce. It went literally right off of his hands. But the offense really wasn't able to do with anything. The offense started out very, very slow, and it did not pick up until the very end of the half, where we drived all the way down, and sure enough, Marcus Mariota floats a little lob into the back of the end zone, and Terry McLaurin makes a heck of a play and catches his first touchdown of the NFL season. Obviously, he's been hurt for the majority of the season, and even then, to begin the season, had a slow start. We all know how the offseason went with Terry and the big contract negotiations and all the holdouts and everything, and Terry desperately needed that to get back in to his rhythm and really get back to being the Terry McLaurin that we know him to be. Sadly, though, Terry McLaurin left early in the game at the very end of the game, injuring the same quad injury that's been kept him out the last month for Washington. So a big blow there. And as I mentioned, the first half started okay. The second half, Washington just did not show up at all. Patrick Mahomes, they came out firing and they scored 3 touchdowns in the second half to win the game 28-7. Chiefs obviously are back to playing Kansas City football, being the Chiefs that we've known them to be. And Washington is just spiraling down. The season is literally, honestly, getting away from them as we speak. They are 3-5, and we're coming up on week 9 in the trade deadline. And one of the things that I feel like has been mentioned the most is that they can take the chance now to get to convince people that they're still in this at all. Proving that they're still a decent team, both at having a good showing against Kansas City, and then it's not like they slow down too much, but because they had to face Seattle on Sunday Night Football this upcoming week, which we'll jump to in here in just a second. So we were just really looking forward to the Commanders proving that they still are that good Washington team from last year, but however, they are not able to get that done. So what does this mean for Washington? As a Washington fan, obviously this has not seemed or looked like the Washington team that I watched last season at all. There's never been that same feeling whatsoever at all. Why is that? Simple. Jaden hasn't been out there most of the time. Terry hasn't been out there most of the time. When you think as to why that Washington team had so much success last year, it was those two guys right there, Jaden and Terry. And without those guys on the field, you see what happens. They just simply can't get rolling at all. Even when Jaden got hurt last year, and missed pretty much that whole game against Carolina, and you can even bring up the Dallas game at the very end of the season. Marcus still was able to come in there and to keep the team in check and find Terry and still find ways to win games and everything like that. But there has just literally been no feeling of that at all up to this point to the season. Now, I will say still there is plenty of football left. After week 9 here, we'll officially be halfway through the NFL season. So there's definitely a lot of time that they can turn around. But there again, at the same time, there's not all that time left. You have maybe a couple weeks before. I mean, you're talking, you're in the division where Dallas, it's either that they're really good or really bad, and then Philadelphia is obviously the Philadelphia Eagles, and the NFC is just stacked to begin with. So you really have to start now if you want to have any shot at making somewhat of a run this NFL season, like we were all expecting you to. I think it all hangs in the balance. Does Jaden and Terry realistically play on Sunday night? I know for a fact they are hoping that he is able to practice this week, be a full participant most of the week. I know resting him this Monday was just more of a safety type thing, making sure that he is 100% whenever he hopefully does come back. Terry McLaurin, I haven't seen anything about him yet, practice-wise or anything like that. All I know is that he did not re-enter the game. He literally left with 5 minutes to go left in the game. So we'll see what ends up coming out of this injury with his quad if he's able to go. This is a big game coming off facing a Seattle team that is coming off of a bye. Jackson Smith-Njigba playing the way that he is. So we'll see what they're able to do. We'll jump into those predictions here in just a little bit. But that's just the biggest thing right now concerning with Washington. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that maybe we can find a way to get back on the right track. Somebody who did get on the right track this past week, the New York Jets. Look at there. Give it up for the New York Jets. They finally got their first win facing the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, this is a Bengals team without Joe Burrow right now. They were coming off of a big win against the Steelers the week prior, beating the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. The Jets were 0-7 coming to this game, seeming like just everything going wrong, can't find a way to win. They were originally planning to bench Justin Fields in favor of Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor gets hurt, is not able to go, so they have to start Justin Fields. And look at there, Justin Fields plays a great game, and the Jets find a way to win and beat the Bengals and get their first win of the season. I think the biggest now question everybody's asking is all right, is Justin Fields the starter for this team now officially? Did he find a way to save himself and reclaim his role as the team starter and really be able to lock it in and for moving forward for the Jets? Um, I hope so. I'm a big Justin Fields fan. I hope that he's able to figure it out with this team. I think Aaron Glenn, obviously the energy that he brings to that football team, that football team is very disciplined, and that 1-7, you know, I don't think anybody was really expecting the Jets to be a great football team, but for sure we were expecting them to play better than they had prior, and we really got a taste of what that Jets team could be like on Sunday. And this, you got to factor in the fact that they were playing without their best wide receiver, Garrett Wilson. So if that's what they're able to perform like right now, whenever Garrett Wilson comes back, we'll see what they're able to do. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that Justin Fields is able to continue playing football like this. If so, we'll see where the Jets wind up. Obviously, the playoffs are not in any form of sight for them with them being at 1-7, but it would be nice for them to go ahead and get back on their feet and really figure out what this football team will look like and looks to be, not even for just this season, but the season, maybe next season or the season after that. But really the culture of how this team's going to be moving forward and the thought of maybe trying to get people to come in and join the team that they're building right now. A team that has found pretty much who they are, coming off of a phenomenal win, and 5 wins, in fact, straight. The Denver Broncos have figured it out. Man, this team is rolling right now. They are in first outright for that division right now, ahead of the Chiefs and the Chargers, who also both got wins, as we mentioned before, this past week. And they are absolutely rolling. Bo Nix is playing phenomenal football right now. That offense is so fun to watch. That defense is so fun to watch. The biggest news for them, though, right now is that Patrick Surtain, I believe, strained his pec. I want to say that's what it was. He got hit for that defensive side of the football for the Broncos. Without him, how good is that Denver defense? I still think they're going to be fine, that they have a lot of dollars on that defense, and Sean Payton keeps those boys disciplined. And I'm really excited to see the Denver Broncos play football for the rest of the season right now. I think this was after the year that they had last year making the playoffs. Nobody expected them to make the playoffs. And now coming in looking like a bigger and better team. I think the age and the maturity of Bo Nix speaks volumes. For him coming in as an older guy into the league, you put him with a guy like Sean Payton, a mastermind like Sean Payton. You saw what he was able to do with Drew Brees, and now you're seeing what he's able to do with Bo Nix. And this team's so fun to watch, and I cannot wait to watch Denver Bronco football for the rest of the season going forward. That's the main football stuff that I wrote down that I think is fun to talk about for right now. Now let's dive into a little bit of college football, with the biggest headline coming out of the weekend being LSU, the Tigers. Go Tigers. Brian Kelly is out. Not my dad, Brian Kelly. Fun fact, that's his name. My dad is Brian Kelly. But LSU coach Brian Kelly, he gone. He has been fired after the LSU loss to Texas A&M. God, I don't even. It was 40-something to 20-something. It was bad. It was horrible. They were in Death Valley. It was a night game. LSU was 20-1 under Brian Kelly going into night games, and Texas A&M and Marcel Reed came in there and stomped on them and pretty much killed any chances that they had going forward, any playoff vision that they had, any sort of sights like that they had, out the window immediately. And now Texas A&M really making a statement, showing why they are the number 3 ranked team right now in the SEC, why they are undefeated right now in the SEC, and they've got just got all the momentum in the world. There's so much to talk about with Texas A&M. I think Marcel Reed is now 100% in the conversation for Heisman. Him and Fernando Mendoza, if you ask me, are the 2 big candidates. If you don't know, Mendoza, of course, is the quarterback of Indiana. Marcel Reed, as I just mentioned, the quarterback for Texas A&M. Marcel Reed just literally looks like Jaden Daniels, if I'm being honest, playing football. The way that he plays football and the poise that he has is what we saw from Jaden last year in the NFL. Marcel is doing that in college football. You pair Marcel up with Mike Elko, just the knowledge that Mike Elko has, and as Pat McAfee likes to say, that giant cranium that he has so much ball knowledge stored up there. This team's an absolute wagon, and this team is so dangerous. This is a team that's pretty much has their eyes set on not only just winning the SEC, going in as a top 4 seed in the college football playoff, and making themselves a big run for the national championship. And I think that they have that in them. They proved that on Saturday night in Death Valley. I think the biggest takeaway, or the biggest thing that I literally left me in shock, was after the game that the A&M and their band came down, and all the fans that were there came in, and they gathered where the A&M team would enter and run into the stadium at. And they were, doing as typical home teams do after a win or a loss, whatever it is. They all, sway back and forth. They sing the alma mater. Texas A&M was doing that in Death Valley. Nobody goes into the LSU and does that, especially for a night game, and Texas A&M just did it. That speaks volumes, and they just made an absolute statement and proved as themselves as why they are such a dangerous team and why they deserve at least a top 3 seed, or a top 3 ranking right now in college football. But shifting over to LSU side, as we mentioned before, Brian Kelly getting fired. I think this is something that's been, meant to be for a long time. Literally, this whole season, has been made about the fact that Brian Kelly he doesn't, fit not only just the LSU role, but the SEC role. He is not an SEC coach. Former players have made it known that he is just not a good guy at all whatsoever. I think the biggest being Kyron Lacey. Of course, if you guys know the story of Kyron Lacey, former LSU player who unfortunately passed away, had all the potential in the world and was going to be an absolute stud in the NFL, but his sadly cutting short, way too short than it should have. The biggest takeaway was that Brian Kelly was nice to him whenever he was, of course, alive and playing for LSU and doing all the great things that he was doing. Whenever he passed away, he showed the family no support, and the family was big on that. And the big make out of Brian Kelly to be is that he only supports the guys that are helping him out rather than just being a good person and, supporting his guys. I don't know anything for a fact. These are all just statements that people have made. But if it is true, Brian Kelly should be ashamed of himself for making himself out to be like that, being selfish like that. But again, don't know what all is true and what isn't true. But what is true is that he's no longer the coach at LSU. And I think that's the best move that LSU could have made all season. It's time to just scrap that whole coaching system, get somebody new in there, somebody that knows how to coach SEC football and deserves to coach at LSU. I think there are a bunch of big names out there of people who could potentially go to coach at LSU, and they're all over the place. Like John Summerall, the coach at Tulane, is obviously the biggest name out there, as in, somebody who coaches a smaller school could potentially go and coach a big school like LSU. Lane Kiffin literally gets thrown at any SEC job opening that comes about. Speaking for Florida, now LSU, Arkansas, places like that. I think another funny one is John Gruden. John Gruden has been making it known that he really wants to go coach in the SEC. And I think that obviously is somebody that fits to coach in the SEC. I would love to see John Gruden go coach the SEC and the LSU Tigers. If not LSU, go coach at Florida. And then Coach O, the former LSU Tiger coach, has made it known that he wants to coach again sometime. And of course, if you don't remember, which how couldn't you, Coach O is the coach that coached at LSU whenever LSU won the national championship a few years ago with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, all of them. And I guess it's worth mentioning Nick Saban has also been mentioned before. But Nick Saban ain't going back to coach anytime soon. I'm pretty certain of that. I think he's very, very satisfied with it where he's at, working with Pat McAfee every single Saturday on game day. So those are just some names that have been thrown around. Obviously, we'll see in the future where this team goes in direction of. I just hope that they find somebody that actually fits the role of coaching in the SEC, and not some guy that just doesn't fit the role at all. So fingers crossed that they're able to figure it out down there in Louisiana. That's obviously one of the most historical football programs in college football of all time. So definitely hire the right person and get somebody in there that knows what they're doing and that deserves to coach SEC football. But that's all that we're going to recap. Before we jump into predictions, predictions this week are going to be NFL and college football. I went down and wrote the biggest college football games, and then NFL, I wrote down all the biggest NFL games. We'll predict those. I want to take a second to give a huge shout out to Mr. Steve Goodson and everybody at ManCave Media. Mr. Steve, let me on his podcast, podcast/show, 2 Men and Six Pack, this past Sunday. It's a more local thing for me. That's what the more that he targets. He not only does that show, but he does more high school things with high school football and high school sports in general with a guy by the name of Chris Miller. But that's more a Chris Miller show. But everything that he's doing with Man Cave Media is absolutely amazing. I was so honored to be able to get the chance and go on his show this past weekend and had a great time. And definitely look forward to maybe going back in the future and be on either show. Honestly, I love high school sports too, but that attacks more, my local areas and everything that people love to go watch to talk about high school football. But if you do love not only just hearing me talk all that I do about all the pros and college footballs and stuff like that, he also does all that stuff too and brings on great guests and regulars that he has on every Sunday night at 6. So I'm going to leave all of his Wednesdays. But that I just want to get that shout out of the way, and now we're going to jump into our NFL and college football predictions to wrap up this week's episode. We'll start with college football. I've got a few games written down. We'll start out with Carolina and Syracuse. I believe this game's being played on Friday night. I'm a big Carolina fan. Carolina obviously lost in overtime to the ranked Virginia this past week, 17-16. Bill Belichick honestly has been having a better showing here recently with Carolina the past couple weeks, but literally just they found any way in the book to lose, and they're really just looking at to find some ground and some positive to get away from. And, there are a lot of positives to take away from UNC this past week. I think Gio Lopez played a lot better, played probably his best game that we've seen out of him up to the season point. The defense for sure played Preston. The biggest, I think, headline for this game, Arch Manning. I'm unsure of what his status is. He got hurt at the end of the Mississippi State game Texas had this past weekend. So we'll see what if he's 100% or if he's not able to go Saturday against Vandy. Vandy obviously coming off of a big win against Missouri. They are ranked in the top 10 now. They were 10 before. I want to say they're 9 now. So Vandy is hot right now. Diego Pavia is playing some of the best football in college football right now. Another Heisman candidate for sure. And I think that Vandy's going to get a big win against Texas here, whether Arch is playing or not. I think Texas has really just had this kind of season. We're just waiting for Arch to kind of explode. He had a great game this past week against Mississippi State, but at the same time, it's Texas, and we're not expecting them to struggle against Mississippi State, even though Mississippi State is also playing great football right now. But I think that Vandy's going to march in there and they're going to get a big win against the Longhorns this weekend against Texas. And I really want to see Diego Pavia march in there with his swagger and pull off a big victory. So I'm rolling with Vandy. This is a big game for the ACC being played this weekend, Miami versus SMU. This game has big implications for how the ACC ends up being, for sure who ends up playing in the ACC title game. Obviously, Georgia Tech is the big number 1 ACC team right now, as they are undefeated just in general, ranked number 7 right now. As I mentioned on Mr. Steve's show earlier this earlier this weekend. I said that I believe that the ACC championship will be between Georgia Tech and whoever wins this game right here between Miami and SMU. Um, I think that ultimately I'm rolling with Miami. Miami's still one of the just so dangerous. Obviously took a bad loss to Louisville a couple weeks ago, got back on track against Stanford, got a huge win, and now they will kick off at I want to say it's a 10 a.m. local time kickoff for them in this game, but it'll be 12 Eastern on ESPN. So make sure it's a big game to watch for sure. But I'm going to take the safe bet. I'm going to roll Carson Beck in Miami to get a big win against SMU on Saturday. Big SEC game, Oklahoma and Tennessee. Oklahoma coming off of the loss to Ole Miss, going into Nashville to face Tennessee. Excuse me, Knoxville, not Nashville. Tennessee plays in Knoxville. I think Oklahoma's going to get a big statement win here against Tennessee. I like Oklahoma's defense in this game. I think John Mateer has been playing better ever since he's been kind of back. It's been kind of like a stepping stone type thing ever since he's came back from his injury. They almost were able to squeak out a win against Ole Miss this past weekend, but Ole Miss ended up pulling away. But so that's why I just expect Tennessee to get a big win here. I think this will be big for them. They still obviously have the playoffs in sight at only 6-2. There's still a long there's still plenty of games left ahead for them, and I think it starts here. They're getting a big win against Tennessee, and I definitely look for Oklahoma's defense to be a big reason why they win that game this weekend. USC versus Nebraska. I want to say USC is number 23 right now. Nebraska not ranked. Both teams I want to say are 6-2. I got Nebraska in this game. I really like the way that Nebraska is playing football right now. I really like what Matt Rule said and the fact of like they were. I want to say the quote was, "We celebrated 6 wins last year, but this season we don't celebrate 6. We keep marching and keep looking forward." This team's Nebraska. Matt Rule's looking to bring this team back to what we all, the old school Cornhuskers. One of the best college football game in ESPN eyes, because this is where game day is at. Cincinnati versus Utah. Utah obviously coming off of that. Oh my gosh, that butt whooping against Colorado. They put up 40 on them in the first half. I mean, that game was just ugly. That was harsh to watch. I did see sadly saw the first half of that this past weekend. Devin Dampier was hurt and missed the last game. So we'll see what he's able to do if he's back this weekend for Utah. I've talked about Devin before. I talked about him in the first episode, actually, how much of a big fan I was because I saw the way that he performed against UCLA. Obviously, we see how UCLA's performed up to this point, but still, I really love Devin Dampier as a quarterback. He's also playing really good football right now. They're both ranked. Utah is 24, Cincinnati's 17. I want to say that's how it goes right now. Cincinnati's only lost 1, but this game is in Utah, and I think the Utah fans are going to show up. They're going to pack the stadium, and I've got Utah winning a big one here against Cincinnati and getting to 7-2. But those are my college picks. And now let's move over to the NFL. And we'll start with Thursday night football between the Dolphins and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson should be back for Baltimore this Thursday night, which is why I got the Ravens winning. The Ravens coming off of a big win against the Chicago Bears. The defense and the Ravens just in general are starting to get healthy again. And as soon as they're full strength, I think that this team's legitimately so good. I still think when full healthy, they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Plenty of football left for them to be able to get back on the right track and to march forward, as that division just is struggling in general. Cleveland, not a great team. Cincinnati, not a great team. Pittsburgh is now 4-3. And the Colts are the hottest team in football, without a doubt. 7-1. Jonathan Taylor, I don't care what you say, we're swapping him out. Jonathan Taylor's number 1 in the MVP race right now. I don't care what anybody says. Literally every weekend, it looks like the man scoring 3 touchdowns and is rushing for everywhere near 150 yards. He is the NFL MVP right now. It's awesome to watch. However, I think the Steelers get a win here. I'm not saying the Colts will play bad. But I think the Steelers get a big win here. I really really like the defensive matchup against the Colts here. I'm interested to see. It just all comes down to the offense for me. I think that Steelers defense again stifles the Colts offense, and it gives the offense the ability for the Steelers for that Rodgers and DK connection to get strong, and they're able to squeak out a victory against the Colts on Sunday. So I'm rolling with the Steelers against the Colts. But you know what? It would be fun to watch the Colts get their 8th win and be 8-1 and be literally the best team in football after Sunday. I think this is probably the biggest game of the weekend that we're fixing to talk about. It seems like this is just it's been a yearly occurrence, whether it's the playoffs or not, between these two teams, and they're pretty much rivals, and they're not even the same division. Of course, we're talking about the Chiefs and the Bills. The Bills coming off of a bye week after having really two bad back-to-back weeks, losing to the Patriots, and gosh, who did they lose to before that? The Falcons, before they went on their bye week. The Chiefs are back to playing Chiefs football, as we mentioned before, and I'm rolling with the Chiefs in this game. But I think that this is such a big game for Buffalo, as New England's playing such good football right now. It seems like that they can't fall behind too much, because who knows what New England is going to do for the rest of the season. And this game is in Buffalo, but I think that the Chiefs are just playing too good of football right now. Patrick Mahomes is back to being Patrick Mahomes. That whole Chiefs team is just so good whenever they're playing their best football, and I think that it continues this weekend over Buffalo. So I'm rolling with the Chiefs over the Bills. Sunday Night Football is my Washington Commanders versus the Seattle Seahawks. We touched on this game earlier. I think it all comes down to the fact, will guys be healthy? I'm hoping that both Jaden and Terry play. If they do, I got Washington winning this game. So they're coming off of a bye, I want to say. Yeah, I think they're coming off of a bye week. I think that the Cowboys get a big win here. I just don't think Arizona's that great of a football team. I think they're decent, but it comes down to injuries and Kyler Murray actually playing good football. We'll see what the Cardinals are able to do, but I think Dallas gets a big win on Monday night against the Cardinals, and getting back on track after a horrible loss to the Broncos on Sunday. But that's my predictions, and that'll do it for me here. I'm sorry again for not bringing you guys an episode last week. Made sure to jump on and give you guys an episode for this week. And if you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. If you like more of this stuff, I of course have a bunch of different social media stuff that I love to use as interactions and ways to talk to you guys. So please go follow those. Those will be in the description below. Be sure to look out for on those pages.